Sawadee Kap. Hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today we're studying the 5 precepts. If you've heard that the Buddha taught no killing, no stealing, no sexual misconduct, no lying, and no intoxicants, you haven't studied the full teachings of Gotama Buddha. Today we're going to study the actual words of the Buddha so that you can truly understand what he taught and how to get closer and closer to Nibbana through learning and practicing his teachings. But first, let me show you where I am. Be sure to stick around to the end of the video where I'll share some guidance to help deepen your practice. Today we're studying the 5 precepts. We're using this book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Nibbana. In this book, you'll find English translations of the Pali text. The Pali text, or the Pali Canon, is the original source of Gotama Buddha's teachings. The vast majority of the translations in this book are provided by Bhikkhu Bodhi. He's very well known for his very clear, concise, and direct translations of Gotama Buddha's teachings from the Pali language into English. So let's get started. The first thing you need to understand about the 5 precepts is these precepts are guidance. They are instructions or guidance that will help you to eliminate your unwholesome kamma. Through learning and practicing these teachings, you will significantly reduce the harm that you're causing to other beings, and therefore you will experience harm coming back to you. Through the natural law of Kamma, any harm that we do to other beings will be returned to us. So it's very important that as part of your path to Nibbana and part of walking this path to Nibbana, that you reduce and ultimately eliminate any unwholesome Kamma production. So all of Gotama Buddha's teachings, whether we're talking about the 5 precepts like we are today, or of course the entire Eightfold Path, is all designed to eliminate unwholesome Kamma production so that you won't have to experience any unwholesome Kamma being returned to you. And this is how ultimately you attain Nibbana, by extinguishing all of your unwholesome Kamma. So today we're going to study the 5 precepts, which are guidelines that Gotama Buddha provides, which drastically and significantly reduces and ultimately will help to eliminate your unwholesome Kamma production. So let's start with the first precept. Abandoning the taking of life. Refrain from taking life. Without stick or sword. Scrupulous. Compassionate. Trembling for the welfare of all living beings. What's really important as you dive into studying Gotama Buddha's teachings is that you practice the enlightenment factor of investigation. Gotama Buddha gave us 7 factors of enlightenment. You can see those in chapter 3 of this book. The 7 factors of enlightenment, one of those is investigation. What he means by this is that we need to have the interest in the pursuit to investigate the Dhamma teachings. So let's do that, looking at his very first precept here. It's important that you understand each individual word and what is meant by those words. So because this particular precept deals with not killing, and that's probably what you've seen so far, is that the Buddha taught no killing, okay? But if you look at this precept in much more detail and you investigate it, then you can fully understand what the Buddha is teaching here. In studying the teachings of Gotama Buddha, it's important that you take each word or each phrase and break it down and understand it in detail. Here in this first precept, it's all about living beings. So let's first understand what is a living being. A living being is a being that has consciousness. Human beings have consciousness. Animals have consciousness. We have brains, we have nervous systems, and we feel pain. Therefore, if we cause harm to other living beings, that harm will be returned back to us. Oftentimes I get the question of whether plants are living beings. Plants are not living beings. While we consider them to be alive, they are not living beings because they don't have a brain, they don't have a nervous system, and therefore they don't feel pain. They are here for us to provide fruits, vegetables, and other resources to sustain life here on this planet. So therefore, we use plants to help us sustain life on this planet. So here in the first precept, Gotama Buddha is describing that we should be trembling for the welfare of all living beings. This is humans and animals. He adds that we should be compassionate. Compassion is concern for others' misfortune. So we should be concerned about humans and animals, the misfortune that they experience. Going backwards a little bit further into this precept, the word scrupulous is used. Scrupulous means an understanding or an interest to not do wrong or to do what's right. Being scrupulous means to be aware and doing what is right and not doing anything wrong. So in this precept, if we're scrupulous, not doing anything wrong, we're compassionate, concerned for others' misfortune, we're trembling for the welfare of all living beings. Okay, this is the last part of the precept. Of course, the first part is much more direct, abandoning the taking of life, meaning we should not kill other beings. Refrain from taking life without stick or sword, scrupulous, compassionate, trembling for the welfare of all living beings. So when you understand this precept in detail, then you can ask questions to yourself or to others. If we understand this precept and we practice it closely, would we assist others to commit suicide, assisted suicide? Would we do that? Would we kill animals, even if they're experiencing sickness or suffering or they're ill? Would we kill them? Would we kill babies? Would we kill babies that are in the womb? Would we do capital punishment and kill prisoners, right? These are all killings that are being done in our society today. But are they proper for us to do if we have compassion, trembling for the welfare of all beings? Now, someone might say that if there's an animal who is suffering and has cancer, that we should kill it in order to reduce its suffering. But in these teachings, it's important that each being live out its full natural life and experience its Kamma as part of that life, so that then it can be reborn into a better life in the next life. If we kill a being prior to its natural death, then it hasn't fully experienced its natural life. So therefore, it's going to be reborn, and it's going to be reborn into most likely a lesser being, a being that makes it more tough for them to experience life and to develop consciousness to reach to a higher level being. So here in this very first precept, it's important that you break it down piece by piece and you understand exactly what it's describing. I've provided in the book some examples of various killings like euthanasia of human or animal, termination of pregnancy, suicide, assisted suicide, capital punishment, attacking in war, or any government-sponsored killings are all intentional killings of another being. If there's a person who's seeking nibbana, remember all of these teachings are followed by choice, then you would not participate in these type of killings because there is an intentional killing. Additionally, in this precept, we talk about defense or protection. We also talk about consuming animal flesh. And there's other discussion under this precept that I provided for you to help you think about this precept and how you may practice it. Now let's discuss the second precept. Abandoning the taking of what is not given, living purely, accepting what is given, awaiting what is given, without stealing. This precept is often translated as just no stealing. And yes, if we steal something or we take a belonging of somebody else's, then that's going to cause harm. And we shouldn't do that. But you need to reflect upon the full words of this and think about various situations that you may be in and how you should potentially approach that. So of course, outright stealing somebody's bicycle or car or their cell phone, this is going to cause harm. Therefore, harm is going to come to us. But there's other situations that are maybe not as explicit or direct. What if we are in a classroom, a teacher has different supplies on their desk, and we just walk up and we take the stapler and we just start using the stapler and then pass it around the class and start allowing everyone else to use it. This maybe wouldn't be considered stealing because your intention is to put the stapler back on the desk. But is it appropriate for us to just take that stapler without asking? That's what Gotama Buddha is talking about here, is awaiting what is given. So we should ask the teacher, "Teacher, is it okay that we use your stapler?" And the teacher would then confirm or potentially say something else. And then we have permission to use this. So it's very important that you look at each individual precept, you read it, you understand each word, investigate each word, and then reflect upon it in various situations that you may have found yourself in the past or you may find yourself in the future, and consider how you might approach that situation so that you can practice this precept very closely. The third precept, abandoning unchastity, abandoning sexual relations with women, men, who are protected by their mother, father, mother and father, brother, sister, or relatives, who are protected by their Dhamma, that's the teachings of Gotama Buddha, who have a husband, wife, or partner, whose violation entails a penalty, or even one who has been garlanded by a man or woman as a sign of engagement. It's really important that you break this down into very individual pieces that will help you to fully understand the teaching. Abandoning unchastity. Chastity is to not have sex with multiple people. So if we're abandoning unchastity, unchastity would be having sex with many partners. So if we're abandoning that, then we're not having sex with many partners. Abandoning sexual relations with women. Remember, Gotama Buddha was speaking to mostly a male audience, so I've inserted the additional pronoun of men, who are protected by their mother, father, mother and father, brother, sister, or relatives. This is referring to people who are living in a household with relatives, with their mother, their father, their mother and father, their brother, their sister, or relatives. Because this human being is being guided by their relatives, older relatives, people who are trying to teach them and train them a better way of life. So if somebody was to have sex with that person, then they're taking them away, they're taking their mind away into a sexual relationship, which has a lot of intimacy and a lot of ability for harm if it's not being conducted with care. So what Gotama Buddha is providing guidance here is that we shouldn't have sex with minors, of course, and even people who are still living at home with their parents or relatives, because they are being guided and taught, and it's important that those people have an opportunity to teach this new being to become more stable mind before someone from the outside is having sexual relations with this person. And that information is provided here underneath of this precept. Gotama Buddha goes on to say, someone who is protected by their Dhamma, the teachings of the Buddha. One aspect of the teachings of the Buddha is to completely eliminate sexual contact. And you may not be ready to do that at this time, but later in your life, you may choose to practice celibacy. And if you're practicing celibacy and choosing not to have sexual relations with other people, and somebody went and tried to lure them away from this practice, that would cause harm. So Gotama Buddha is saying, if someone is protected by the Dhamma, meaning they've chosen not to have sex as part of their practice, it wouldn't be right for someone to try to lure them away from that practice. Additionally, Gotama Buddha says, someone who has a husband, and then I added wife or partner, because if someone else already has a partner, it wouldn't be right to have sex with them. It's going to cause harm. Whose violation entails a penalty, right? So if we're having sex with other people who are already in a relationship, it's going to cause harm. And we should be sure that any sexual partner that we choose doesn't have a relationship with another partner. Gotama Buddha goes even further, and he describes anyone who has been garlanded by a man as a sign of engagement. This is someone who has been engaged to be married. They're not yet married, but they're in a committed relationship through the acknowledgement of an engagement to be married. If we are to have sex with that person, it's going to cause harm. Therefore, it's going to cause harm to us. These details are in the book, and you can further look at Gotama Buddha's words, which are in bold, and then I've provided some guidance to help you understand this further. Sexual conduct has a pleasurable experience, and it can be a wonderful experience. However, because it's so intimate and requires such close contact with human beings, that you can cause a lot of harm with sexual conduct. So this craving that we're born into this world with, to crave sexual conduct, it's important that we temper it, that we manage it, and ultimately, if you want to attain the highest stages of enlightenment, to eliminate it. So there's guidance here that will help you understand how to not cause harm with your sexual conduct, including sex without consent and sex with people that are human trafficked. So you can read this and understand more about multiple partners, about paid sexual services, about same-sex partners. If you notice in Gotama Buddha's teachings, he never once described that sexual misconduct included same-sex partners. He was well aware of men who didn't identify with masculine qualities. He was also well aware of females who don't identify with feminine qualities. He describes it in his teachings, not in this particular part of his teachings, but I've seen it in other parts of his teachings. So he was aware of people that didn't identify with the sexual genitalia or the body that they're currently born into, that the mind didn't identify with those qualities. But he never explained that it would be sexual misconduct for two men or two women to have a sexual relationship together. The reason why is because those people aren't causing harm to anyone else through having a sexual relationship among themselves. If they're having a loving, caring, kind, polite relationship with each other, they're working to develop a life together through a life of commitment, a relationship, there's no harm being done to anyone else. It's just two loyal, loving, consenting adults having a sexual relationship. So you'll see that in this chapter. And then we go into masturbation as well. Masturbation is oftentimes thought as something as being unwholesome or unclean or something that should not be done. These are teachings from other traditions that people have confused. Gotama Buddha never explained that as part of his teaching about sexual misconduct. In fact, masturbation can be used to start to thin your sexual craving. If someone has 3, 4, 5 boyfriends or girlfriends, and they want to start to thin that down to just one person and gradually train the mind to come to one person, perhaps masturbation is a way that they could do that. And then ultimately, if somebody would like to eliminate sexual contact altogether without anyone, they may need to use masturbation to slowly eliminate and extinguish their craving. So, is masturbation harming anyone else? No, it's only being done with one person. It's only being done with yourself. Therefore, there's no harm to anyone else, so no harm is going to be returned to you. The challenge with masturbation is sometimes people can get addicted to it, and the craving can just continually grow and grow and grow. So it's important that as you use this potentially as a way to thin your sexual craving, that you know that that's exactly what you're doing, is thinning your sexual craving rather than precipitating it and growing it and making it more and more flourish. So masturbation is not an unwholesome practice. It can be used in a healthy way to thin your sexual craving. So you don't have to feel guilty or shameful if that's a practice that you're currently involved in, or you decide to use that in the future as part of your practices. But all of that is here in the book for you. The fourth precept: abandoning false speech, refraining from false speech, a truth speaker, one to be relied on, trustworthy, dependable, not a deceiver of the world. This is often translated as do not lie. And that's correct. We should not lie. But when you dive into this precept and you understand the words in much more detail, you can understand that there's much more meaning here about speech and how we should speak in order to make sure that we are not a deceiver of the world. So this includes gossip, slander, all types of other speech that we might use, talk with deceit. So I go into that discussion here in the book for you to understand, but it's important for you to practice this so you can see the truth. If you cut out gossip and slander and talk with deceit, and you eliminate all of those from your practice, you will see that you'll have better relationships and better things will happen for you. So it's very important that you dive into this precept and that you practice it. I think it's very important to note that Gotama Buddha understood Kamma so well and so deeply, and he understood that false speech was so detrimental to our practice and to our Kamma that he didn't even tell a joke that had a lie in it. So even when he was joking, he spoke the truth and told jokes that only spoke the truth. So it's important that you only speak truth, because if you decide to speak with gossip or slander or deceit or somehow lies, people aren't going to be able to rely on you. They aren't going to consider you a truth speaker, one to be relied on. You will potentially be perceived as a deceiver of the world. And therefore, you'll notice that your relationships will be much harder and it will be more difficult to conduct yourself around other people, because it will be more challenging for you to establish and maintain deep relationships with people, because they'll be afraid. Are you going to gossip about them? Are you going to slander them? Are you going to lie to them? How can they rely on you? So it's very important that we talk in the way that Gotama Buddha describes here, also using right speech from the Eightfold Path. But this particular precept provides you some guidance along those lines. The fifth precept: refraining from strong drink and sloth-producing drugs, the basis for heedlessness. Oftentimes, this precept is translated as do not take intoxicants. And that is part of this precept. But what's really at the core of this precept is the word heedlessness. So it's important that you look up this word and you understand it. What heedlessness means is unattentive, unmindfulness, unalertness, unawareness. So any substance is what the Buddha is talking about here, is any substance that produces heedlessness should be avoided. So heedlessness is unalertness, unmindfulness, unawareness, unattentiveness. And if you understand heedlessness in this way, then you understand, of course, heroin, cocaine, alcohol, these types of substances produce heedlessness. But if you dive even deeper into this word heedlessness and you start stripping away these other substances and drugs, what you'll notice is as your mind becomes more and more pure, even substances like caffeine causes heedlessness. You can get to the point where as you're ingesting caffeine that you become unalert, unaware, unmindful, and as part of that excited mental state that the caffeine produces, you may say things and do things that cause unhealthy kamma or unwholesome kamma. So as you practice these teachings closer and closer, you may choose at some point to eliminate caffeine from your diet. But that's a personal choice for you. Here, this particular precept, precept number 5, is at the end because by practicing this precept, the mind can be more pure. It can be more mindful, more aware, more attentive. However, if you don't practice this precept, you're more likely to do all the other 4. You're more likely to kill, you're more likely to steal, you're more likely to commit sexual misconduct, you're more likely to have false speech or gossip or slander or lying. So this particular precept, not ingesting sloth-producing drugs or substances that would be the basis for heedlessness, is very, very important, because by doing this, you can cause yourself unwholesome kamma. And if you look at people in your community, and if you think about people who are maybe in jail, almost all of them will tell you that they had substance abuse issues. And kamma is something that we experience right here and now, in this life and in future lives as well. So if you see someone who's in jail, that's because of their actions mostly. Of course, there are innocent people who are in jail, but mostly they're people that have caused problems in the community. And if you talk to them, you'll notice that most of them have had substance abuse issues, and therefore they may have killed or stealed or had sexual misconduct or a lot of lies. So this particular precept is very, very important. But I also provide some information in here about marijuana, because marijuana nowadays has been known to have some medical benefits. So it's really important that you dive deep into these chapters and that you read the words and you reflect upon them. Things like cigarettes are in here, things like caffeine. So also psychedelic substances. There's various substances today that didn't exist during the lifetime of the Buddha. And this is why when he taught, he used language that was timeless, because he knew everything is impermanent. And even though alcohol or sloth-producing drugs were part of what existed during his lifetime, he knew that things would change and evolve, and there would be new substances like caffeine, like other things that we discover in this world. So that's why he said refrain from, and then eventually the basis for heedlessness. So it's very important that you understand the language of these precepts and that you apply it to daily life as it exists today. And in this book, I've provided some guidance based on the things that I'm aware of that exist today that you may encounter, that you can learn how to practice these precepts based on things that exist in today's world. So dive into this chapter, read it very closely, make sure you ask questions online or message me privately so that you can really understand these very, very deeply. These precepts are meant to be guidance to help you drastically reduce and ultimately further eliminate your unwholesome kamma. Of course, it's the Eightfold Path that fully helps you to eliminate your unwholesome kamma, but these 5 precepts are part of the Eightfold Path. These 5 precepts plug into the Eightfold Path. So learning, practicing these 5 precepts is a big step forward in eliminating your unwholesome kamma so that you won't experience harm coming back to you. I hope this discussion was helpful for you. I wasn't meaning to go through the entire book and draw out every last little aspect of this particular chapter, but rather this video is to encourage you to investigate these teachings, to go through all 5 precepts, making sure that you understand each individual word, that you look at how to apply these in your life through practice, and that you consider the content that I've provided to help you further reflect on these teachings. Because by understanding these teachings and practicing them, you'll notice that you'll significantly reduce your unwholesome kamma. Now on to guidance to help you understand how to deepen your practice of these teachings. These precepts are guidance to help you further understand the teachings and get closer and closer to practicing these 5 precepts. They're not meant for you to snap your fingers and instantly be able to practice all of these teachings in depth. You're going to need to understand the teachings, reflect upon them, and then gradually deepen your practice more and more and more so that you can observe that these teachings are actually helping you to get closer and closer to Nibbana. So don't put the pressure on yourself to have to practice all of these teachings and everything that you see here in the 5 precepts immediately. It's important that you start by investigating the words, that you understand those, and that you gradually practice them more and more. And as you practice these teachings more and more closely, you'll realize that things in your life will get better and more improved. So keep learning, keep investigating the teachings, and most importantly, keep practicing these teachings so that you can experience a more and more pure mind, which produces a better and better life for you and those around you. Remember, these teachings and practice of them is the very best thing that you can do for yourself, those that are close to you, and all of humanity. So thank you for watching and enjoy learning and practicing the teachings of Gotama Buddha. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Bhutang Bhagavantang Abhivatemi Savakato Bhagavata Tammo Tamang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Sanghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso Bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang Sampuno Sakato Roga Vitu Anuttero Purisa Dhamma Sati Satatawa Manusanang Bhutto Bhagavati